Hello, everybody. This is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we are here on Friday, May 29th, wrapping up week 9 of our 5-minute Histories videos. And before we get into today's topic, the Irish Railroad Workers Museum, I wanted to share a few things that have happened over the last 9 weeks. And let me make sure I get my numbers right. But over the last 9 weeks, we have received dozens and dozens of very kind emails and phone messages from you all who are listening. I cannot thank you enough. Molly and I, my colleague Molly and I, are working from the echo chambers of our living rooms, and getting some outside communication is really, really fantastic. So thank you. We have received over 50 suggestions of historic places to feature in videos. So we've got a backlog that we need to go through, obviously. Thank you for those. We have received more than a few corrections, and I do want to say a sincere thank you for that. We are learning more than anybody on these videos, and helping us get our facts straight is really, really important. So thank you for those of you who are doing that. We've received nearly 20 historic photos of the places that we've done, photos that we didn't have, and we've added to our archives. So next time we go back, we'll have an even more rich set of stuff to present. And finally, we have received many, many, many financial gifts, and I cannot tell you how much that is helping us. We're an organization with 2 staff, and gifts of all sizes are incredibly helpful. So thank you for those of you who have given and those of you who are considering. All right, let's jump into today's topic, which is the Irish Railroad Workers Museum. If you look over my left shoulder, you'll see one of the more famous Irish blessings that I thought I'd put up there for today. But before we get to the museum, which is on Lemmon Street, down on Lemmon Street, the 900 block by today's B&O Railroad Museum, back then the railroad yards. But I thought I would start by saying how we got an Irish Railroad Workers Museum in Baltimore. And I am really pleased to say that it was largely the efforts of 2 friends of mine, 2 late friends of mine, Tom and Joyce Ward. Tom and Joyce Ward were husband and wife and partners in preservation for 50 or more years. They got their start, or at least one of their early starts, on Linden Avenue. They lived in a house that was the former home of Governor Edwin Warfield. And at that time in the 50s, Baltimore City was doing what was called urban renewal or urban clearance. And they were demolishing rows of houses, including in Bolton Hill, lots of rows of houses in Bolton Hill. In fact, if you walk up John Street, you go back by the 1200 block of John Street with houses, the 1300 block, the 1400 block has houses, and the 1500 block has a playground and a school, and the 1600 block has not had nothing but a vacant lot for years and years, and now has a dormitory for Micah. If you're wondering why there are patches of non-housing blocks along Bolton Hill, it's because urban renewal was coming through in the 50s. Tom and Joyce lived on Linden Avenue, and their block was slated to be demolished, and they were not going to take it. So they stood up and they fought back, and they knew that just as homeowners, they didn't stand a chance. So they formed an association, and I think it was called something like the Linden Avenue Protective Association. Tom was president, Joyce was vice president and secretary, I believe, something like that. And they printed up letterhead, and they fought, and they wrote letters, and they did all sorts of things. And the association, in addition to Tom and Joyce, had exactly 0 members. It was the Tom and Joyce Association, but nobody really needed to know that. As Tom said, they lost the battle but won the war. The city, in fact, did demolish their house and their row, but they won the war by the fact that the city stopped. And so we today have a 1700 block of Linden Avenue, not an 1800 or 1900 block. The city got that, but we got 1700 saved and a lot of the rest of Bolton Hill because of Tom and Joyce. Shortly after that, Tom was part of the effort to save Fells Point from the highway. He was one of the founding members of the Preservation Society, and in fact drafted the lawsuit that they filed to block the highway, eventually successfully. And that gets us to today's topic of the Irish Railroad Workers Museum. Actually, before I do that, I just want to say Tom and Joyce have been recently honored with a blue plaque. If you tuned into our Bolton Hill Blue Plaques program, they currently have a blue plaque, and I'm really pleased about that. But in the 1990s, the city wanted to demolish a row of alley houses on Lemmon Street, the 900 block of Lemmon Street. And Tom and Joyce knew that those were really important houses built in the 1840s and housed Irish immigrants who had come from Ireland beginning in the 1840s, what was called the Great Hunger or the Great Famine, immigrating to America and a lot to Baltimore. And those houses helped told part of that story, told an important part of that story. So Tom and Joyce, by this time, Tom was a retired judge and was no stranger to lawsuits. And so what did they do? They formed the Historic Railroad District organization, and then they sued the city. And lo and behold, a judge granted them a stay of demolition, giving them time to raise money and figure out what to do with this row of houses. And in fact, they did raise money. They raised $20,000 and bought 2 row houses. I think it's 918 and 920. And then they raised another $200,000 and converted them, turned them into a museum. And the museum today is really fabulous. It's up and going, well, as much up and going as anybody is, but it tells the story of James and Sarah Feely, Irish immigrants who lived there for 20 years, I believe beginning in 1863. And one of the houses is a recreation of what their house would have looked like, including the bedroom, including a sort of music room, small music room and playroom, and an attic where they would rent out to single Irish immigrants who had just arrived to work for the B&O. That area of Baltimore was a hub of Irish community, largely because of the B&O, offering jobs. Other Irish immigrants, the entire block was owned by Irish immigrants, $400 a house. Other houses were owned by a watchman for the B&O, a fireman for the B&O, and 2 laborers for the B&O chipped in together to buy a house. The house has what's called the Irish shrine inside, and unlike a sort of big marble altar, the shrine is basically a beaten up dresser of drawers with everyday objects like combs and pins and sewing needles on it, done by an artist, a local artist named Wayne Neild, and it was meant to help tell that story of Irish immigration. Wrap up with the second house. The second house has a number of wonderful exhibits in it, including information about the surrounding Hollins Roundhouse neighborhood. So the next time we're able to go out and about, I hope you do stop in and visit the Irish Shrine and think not only of the Irish immigrants who it portrays, but also the people of Irish descent, Tom and Joyce, who fought to save them. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.